Have you ever wondered how many times a person is judged and belittled before they even open their mouth, simply because of the way they dress, the color of their skin, or the place they seem to occupy? Perhaps you've experienced this. Perhaps you've felt that sideways glance, that heavy silence, that feeling that, for someone there, you simply shouldn't be in that space. And that's exactly how this story begins. Imagine an environment where everything exudes power, an elegant, silent place, where every detail has been carefully considered to reinforce status, wealth, and hierarchy. It could be a luxury hotel, an imposing meeting room, an exclusive event, or even a corporate elevator, where million-dollar decisions are made on just a few floors. It is in this setting that he emerges, a self-assured billionaire, accustomed to being obeyed, listened to, and admired. His tone of voice is firm, his gaze is confident, his gestures make it clear that he believes he is at the top of the chain. For him, that space is natural, almost an extension of his own ego. On the other side, almost as if she weren't part of the same scene, is a black woman, discreet, serene posture, simple clothes, without ostentation. Nothing about her screams power in the eyes of those accustomed to judging people by the price of their watch or the position printed on their business card. And that's where something silent but profoundly unequal begins to form. Because even before any word is spoken, the judgment has already taken place. You notice it in the quick glances, the uncomfortable pauses, the slightly impatient tone, small signs of a veiled prejudice, almost invisible to those who practice it, but extremely clear to those who feel it. Perhaps you've already experienced a similar situation, where someone decided who you were before truly knowing you. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you a lot. This encounter, which at first glance seems like just another ordinary interaction, carries a silent tension. The billionaire speaks naturally, interrupts, downplays, makes comments that sound harmless to those who aren't paying attention, but which hurt and diminish. There are no shouts, no explicit insults. It's that kind of subtle, socially accepted humiliation that hides behind a polite smile or a poorly placed joke. Meanwhile, the black woman observes. She listens. She answers only what is necessary. Her calmness is not weakness, but control. Still, for those watching from the outside, the feeling is one of injustice. Something there is not right. The environment seems to conspire in favor of those with money and power, while she is pushed into a place of invisibility. And that is precisely what holds the attention, because deep down, everyone has seen this story repeat itself. Someone being underestimated, someone being treated as lesser, someone being placed in a position they did not choose. Have you ever been through this? Ever felt like you needed to prove yourself twice as much just to be taken seriously? This introduction isn't just the beginning of a story of reverse humiliation or poetic justice. It's a reflection of real, everyday situations that happen more often than many would like to admit. Every detail of this first encounter carries an emotional weight that goes far beyond that luxurious setting. And even if the billionaire believes he's in control, there's something he hasn't yet realized, because sometimes the real game isn't being played on the surface, and it's precisely when everyone thinks they know who won that the true story begins to unfold. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it is precisely here that the story begins to reveal something that many people recognize, even without ever having put it into words. The atmosphere changes almost imperceptibly. What was once just silent contempt begins to gain voice, form, and intention. The billionaire, increasingly comfortable in his position, begins to speak with a crooked smile, as if he is absolutely certain that he is in control of the situation. The words are laden with irony, disguised as jokes. the kind that embarrasses without seeming offensive to those observing from afar. A joke about competence, a snide comment about experience, a clear attempt to place her in a lesser position, as if that space were not rightfully hers. And the most curious thing is that, in his eyes, all of this seems normal. He relies on his position, his money, and the social perception around him. People laugh awkwardly, others look away, some simply remain silent. This collective silence fuels the certainty of someone who believes they have already won, because when no one confronts him, arrogance grows, and there, in that environment that values status above character, he believes he is putting on a true show of authority. Each phrase spoken is like an invisible trophy he awards himself. But something profoundly disconcerting is happening at the same time. The black woman doesn't react as the social script expects. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't defend herself hastily. She doesn't try to prove anything. She responds with few words at the right time, maintaining a firm posture, an attentive gaze, and a calmness that doesn't match someone who is being defeated. This contrast creates immediate discomfort. Because when someone is publicly humiliated, indignation, tears, or revolt are expected. But what we see there is something else. It's strategic silence, it's emotional control. It's a mentality that doesn't let itself be swayed by provocation. This moment reveals much more than a simple discussion. It lays bare internal decisions, behavioral choices, a silent journey that doesn't need to be explained aloud. While the billionaire tries to reaffirm his position with words, she sustains her own presence with her attitude, and this begins to have an unexpected impact on the environment. Some people start to observe more closely. Others realize that this calmness is not submission. There is something there that doesn't fit into the easy narrative of power and hierarchy. What's happening isn't just public humiliation. It's a psychological game. A game where whoever talks the most believes they're winning, while those who observe and choose silence seem to be holding something back. This difference in posture raises an inevitable question for the viewer. Why doesn't she react as expected? What does she know that others don't? What is being built behind the scenes of this seemingly simple scene? This type of situation touches on something profound because it reveals a hidden truth about human relationships. Not all power is noisy, nor does every victory need to be announced. Sometimes, those who seem to be losing have simply decided not to play by the imposed rules. The transformation happens first from within, in the mindset, in the way of seeing the moment not as a personal attack, but as a piece of a larger scenario. While he clings to the image of an immediate winner, she seems to see the long-term impact. And that's where the story begins to take on another layer, because the billionaire, in his eagerness to assert himself, doesn't realize he's revealing much more about himself than about her. Each attempt at humiliation exposes insecurity, a need for validation, a fear of losing control. Meanwhile, the black woman, with her firm posture and few words, comes to occupy a space that cannot be taken away with irony. Her silence speaks, and it speaks loudly to those who know how to listen. This scene isn't just about prejudice or an isolated argument. It's about choices, about how we deal with pressure, about who truly holds power when everything seems to be falling apart. It's about journeys, about how some people carry stories, achievements and truths that don't need to be proclaimed at that moment. And while the environment remains trapped in the illusion that money and position define everything, something begins to shift slowly, almost invisibly, but irreversibly. Because there are times when true strength lies, not in responding, but in observing. Not in winning the argument, but in understanding the game. And while the billionaire clings to the certainty that he has won, something much bigger is forming beneath the surface. Something he cannot yet see, but which has already begun to completely change the course of this story. Comment below, "This makes sense to me." Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because it is precisely here that her silence begins to take on another dimension. The pace of the scene slows down, almost as if time were giving way to something more subtle happening. While the billionaire still clings to the certainty that he came out on top, she remains there, present, observing everything with an attention that few perceive. The silence that previously seemed merely a choice of posture now begins to reveal itself as absolute control of the situation. It is not an absence of reaction. It is emotional mastery. It is awareness of one's own place, even when no one else seems to recognize it. Small details begin to emerge, almost unnoticed by those distracted by his performance. A name mentioned casually, which provokes an instant change in the gaze of someone more experienced in the environment. A brief silence after an interrupted call, as if that call had been more important than it seemed. A document resting on the table, discreetly turned face down, but which arouses curiosity in those who understand the subject. A different name tag, a gesture of respect from someone influential that doesn't match the image of inferiority that the billionaire tries to project. They are subtle, almost invisible signs, but full of meaning. It is at this point that the narrative begins to transform before the viewer's eyes. What seemed like a simple situation of humiliation begins to take on deeper layers. The black woman, until then treated as an extra in that space of power, begins to reveal a presence that can no longer be ignored. Her silence ceases to be interpreted as passivity and begins to be seen as a strategy. There is a hidden truth there, something that has not yet been said, but that is already impacting the environment in a silent and powerful way. Meanwhile, the billionaire remains completely oblivious to what's happening behind the scenes. He's still trapped in his own narrative, believing that control is measured by who speaks loudest or who imposes the most embarrassment. He doesn't notice the glances that begin to meet, the changing expressions, the shifting energy of the place. He still thinks he's playing the right game, when in reality he's just exposing himself. Every arrogant phrase now echoes differently. It no longer sounds like authority, but like a lack of perception. This is one of those situations where true transformation happens silently. There's no announcement, no direct confrontation, no need to prove anything at that moment. Her mindset is different. She understands that some decisions don't need to be explained, only supported, and this creates an impact that goes beyond the scene, because those who observe begin to feel that something is about to change, even without knowing exactly what. Her strategic silence begins to unsettle, not because it's offensive, but because it breaks expectations. It forces everyone there to question their own judgments. Who is this woman, after all? What does she know that others don't? Why do influential people show respect, even discreetly? These questions begin to circulate, even if no one verbalizes them, and that's how the real game begins to reveal itself, not on the surface, but between the lines. There is a journey behind that serene posture, a path made of difficult choices, conscious decisions, and experiences that have shaped a firm and confident presence. Nothing there is improvised, nothing is by chance. The silence is not empty, it is full of history, and the more the billionaire tries to occupy center stage, the further he distances himself from the truth that is unfolding right before him. This moment reveals something essential about power and perception. Not always is the seemingly invisible person on the sidelines. Sometimes they are simply observing, waiting for the right moment. Sometimes they are allowing the other person to fully reveal themselves before making any move. And as the environment begins to sense this silent shift, it becomes clear that there is much more at stake than a simple discussion or a casual encounter. The tension now stems not from words, but from what has yet to be said, from lingering glances, unexpected reactions, and small revelations that emerge without fanfare. Something bigger is about to appear, and the billionaire, trapped in his own certainty, still doesn't realize he's completely out of the loop in the real game unfolding there. Write this down. I'm on this journey too. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because it is precisely here that everything that was hidden begins to align in an almost inevitable way. There is no formal announcement, no dramatic music, no need to raise one's voice. The revelation happens in the most disconcerting way possible, simple, direct, and impossible to ignore. A name is confirmed in a low voice by someone influential. A glance shifts, a request for attention arises with unexpected respect, and suddenly, what seemed improbable becomes evident. She wasn't there by chance. She didn't occupy a lesser position. She was, in fact, the ultimate authority in that setting. Her true identity is effortlessly revealed. Owner of the business, CEO of the group, majority investor, the person whose signature defines decisions that affect money, careers, and futures, including the future of that billionaire who, until seconds ago, believed he was in absolute control. The scene becomes almost emotionally silent, as if the entire environment needs a moment to absorb the impact. There is no celebration, no smile of victory, only the truth occupying the space that has always been hers. And it is in this silence that the transformation happens. The billionaire, once expansive and confident, loses his balance. His body betrays what his mind is still trying to process. His tone of voice changes, his gaze falters, his posture shrinks. Everything that sustained his certainty, money, position, influence, proves fragile in the face of a reality he did not foresee. He realizes, too late, that he wasn't humiliating someone powerless. He was exposing his own limited mindset based on superficial judgments and hasty decisions. The humiliation is reversed without the need for revenge. There's no exchange of barbs, no moralizing speech. She doesn't need to remind us of what was said, nor point out each disrespectful action. The truth does that on its own, and it does so in a much more profound way, because when real power is revealed, everything that was said before loses its force. The ironies sound empty, the embarrassing jokes become embarrassing echoes for those who made them. The impact of this revelation goes beyond that specific moment. It permeates the environment, affects those who observed in silence, and provokes uncomfortable reflections. How many times has someone been underestimated there? How many decisions have been made based on appearance, skin color, or discreet posture? This scene exposes not just one man, but an entire logic that confuses noise with authority and arrogance with leadership. She remains serene, not because she won, but because she was never in contention. Her journey didn't need that public recognition to exist. That position was built behind the scenes, with firm choices, strategic vision, and a mindset that understands the right time for revelations. And perhaps that's what's most unsettling, realizing that true power doesn't feel the need to prove itself all the time. As the billionaire tries to reorganize his thoughts, something breaks inside him. Not just the image he had built for others, but the narrative he had been telling himself. He thought he had won an argument. Now he understands that he was playing a completely different game, with rules he didn't know, and this realization weighs heavily. It weighs heavily because there's no undoing what was said. There's no erasing the impact it caused. This turnaround doesn't bring euphoria, but relief. Relief for those watching, for those who have lived through similar situations, for those who know how unfair it is to be judged before being known. It's poetic justice happening cleanly, almost elegantly, without explicit humiliation, without emotional violence. Just the truth occupying the place that has always been hers. And when the dust begins to settle, it becomes clear that this moment is not an end, but a watershed moment. Because from then on, nothing can be seen in the same way. Relationships change, perceptions adjust, and while some are still trying to understand what just happened, others already realize that this revelation is only the tip of the iceberg of something even bigger that is about to unfold. Comment below. This makes sense to me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the true lesson of this story lies not only in the revelation itself, but in what comes after it. The impact doesn't end the moment the truth appears. It continues to reverberate, silent and relentless, within each person who witnessed that scene. The billionaire feels it first, not as an immediate shock, but as a weight that settles in. He realizes, little by little, that he has lost something that no amount of money can easily replace. He lost respect, he lost reputation, he lost control of the narrative he always believed he dominated. Before he was the central figure, the loudest voice, the undeniable presence. Now he's just someone trying to reorganize his own image after being unmasked by his own actions. It wasn't his actions that exposed him, it was the decisions he made, the words he chose, the mindset he revealed without realizing it. Prejudice, when it comes to the surface, exacts a high price. And that price doesn't appear in numbers, but in changing glances, in awkward silences, in doors that no longer open as easily. Meanwhile, the black woman remains strong. There is no celebration, no need for reaffirmation. She doesn't become greater because someone fell, but because she has always been whole. Her dignity isn't born in that moment. It simply becomes visible to those who previously refused to see it. Her victory isn't over someone, it's over a system of hasty judgments that insist on defining value based on appearance, skin color, or discreet posture. This difference is essential, because here we are not just talking about a social upheaval, but a transformation of perspective. Real power doesn't need to humiliate to exist. It doesn't shout, it doesn't provoke, it doesn't seek validation in every phrase. It is sustained by consistent choices, in a journey built far from the spotlight, behind the scenes where no one applauds, but everything is decided. And perhaps this is the hidden truth that is most unsettling, realizing that many certainties were merely comfortable illusions. The billionaire learns the hard way that arrogance is not strength, but disguised weakness. That judging someone quickly says more about the judge than about the one being judged. That underestimating someone can cost not only a negotiation, but credibility itself. And this lesson doesn't come with applause, it comes with silence. A heavy, reflective silence that forces one to confront one's own image without filters. For those observing, this story becomes a mirror. How many times has someone been reduced to a superficial impression? How many decisions have been made without knowing the whole story? How many opportunities have been denied due to pure prejudice or a shallow reading of reality? These questions don't have easy answers, but they have an impact. They challenge mindsets, provoke discomfort, and demand a review of values. Black women don't need to give speeches to teach this lesson. Their posture does it. Their calmness, their coherence, their lack of revenge. They show that it's not necessary to react to every provocation to emerge victorious. Sometimes the greatest strength lies in knowing how to wait, in allowing the truth to reveal itself in due time, in understanding that some battles are won without direct confrontation. This story makes it clear that the price of prejudice always comes due, sooner or later. Sometimes in the form of public loss, sometimes in the form of internal downfall. And while some still try to justify past attitudes, others are beginning to see how much this type of behavior limits, impoverishes, and distorts their worldview. True power, in the end, lies not in dominating people, but in understanding contexts, respecting trajectories, and recognizing that no one is less for being discreet. And when this understanding begins to take hold, even slowly, something opens up. A new way of looking, of deciding, of positioning oneself. Because stories like this don't end when the scene closes. They continue to echo, provoking reflection, preparing the ground for changes that are still forming, silent but profound. Comment below. This makes sense to me. If you've made it this far, it's because this story has resonated with you in some way, not as empty entertainment, but as reflection, as a mirror, as something that made you stop for a moment and rethink judgments, attitudes, and how power manifests itself in everyday life. This type of content exists precisely for that reason, to provoke, to bring to light truths that are often hidden behind the scenes of relationships. If you feel that these stories resonate with you and that it's worthwhile to continue on this journey of reflection, subscribing to the channel is a simple way to say that you want to follow along, enjoying content that speaks to reality and goes beyond the surface. This is how we build a space where stories like this continue to be told with depth and purpose. And if you want to leave a sign that you stayed until the end, write in the comments, "This message was for me." Sometimes a short phrase says it all and creates a silent connection between the viewer and the storyteller. And if at any point you felt that lump in your throat or that thought that was hard to ignore, helps show that this conversation is worth continuing, there's a video over here that complements this topic and delves even deeper into this reflection. Click on it and continue reading with me there.